Hey guys, Jess with MS, and today I want to talk you through one of the most common symptoms of multiple sclerosis and a lot of other chronic illnesses. So, if you haven't guessed, the symptom that we are referring to is fatigue. I'm sure a few of you have heard of it, and those of you who have MS, I am almost certain that you have experienced fatigue at some point in some manner. So today I'm going to talk you through a bit about what chronic fatigue and fatigue in sort of chronic illnesses is, and a little bit on how you can manage it. So the first point I want to make, and this is something I really want to stress, and if there's anything you can take away from this video, it's probably this, is fatigue is not the same as being tired. It is amazing, and I mean, you'll see next week when my first of my monthly assumptions videos comes out, just how many people feel like their fatigue is devalued by people saying, I feel tired too, or I didn't sleep last night so I know how you feel. And personally, I've had that said to me a lot when I try to tell people that I'm fatigued, and I do get a lot of, oh, I didn't sleep well either, so I know exactly what you feel. But fatigue and being tired are very different things. Like, I get tired and I also get fatigued, but they are different. Fatigue is one of the most common symptoms of MS. The National MS Society estimated that about 80% of people with MS experience fatigue, but there are studies that show that it could be as high as 96% of people with MS. But fatigue is obviously not just associated with MS, it's associated with a whole host of other chronic illnesses. But as somebody with MS, I can tell you about my experience of fatigue from an MS point of view. There is actually two types of fatigue, which is something I didn't personally know until I was doing my research for this video. I just thought there was just fatigue in general. But there's actually a primary and secondary fatigue. So primary fatigue is caused by the actual damage, the brain and spinal lesions of your MS, whereas secondary fatigue is caused by the symptoms of your MS. So you can get fatigue from being in a lot of pain or having weakness, but it's the physical symptoms that are causing the fatigue, not the actual damage. So fatigue is categorized as a constant feeling of tiredness, a weakness that is not proportionate to any exercise or activities that you have done. So the description of fatigue that you can find is kind of does not do justice to what fatigue is at all. So I thought I'd take you through how I describe fatigue, and I've also found some other people's descriptions of fatigue from the MS Trust and MS Society websites. So personally, when I try to describe fatigue, I use it in one of two ways. So I kind of split my fatigue into physical and mental fatigue because there's two different areas. You can have physical fatigue, which kind of just affects your body and your limbs, and mental fatigue, which is obviously in your mind, and it affects your thoughts and your speech and things like that. So I describe my physical fatigue like walking through mud. It's like you're trying to get through this really thick mud, but your body is struggling because it's really pushing against you. Like every single step you take is so much effort. And even like personally, when I get really bad fatigue, it's to the point where like I can't lift my head up, I can't lift my arms. I have to get people to like help me eat and drink because I physically don't have it in me to sit up to drink a drink. So that's kind of how I sort of try and describe my physical fatigue, but that's like a very basic overview. Like I don't really know quite how to put into words what it feels like, but I'm gonna try to use my own and other people's experiences, because I want this channel not to be just me telling you what's happened with me, because I want to encourage that everyone's experiences should support each other. So that's why I did find some other little descriptions of fatigue from other people, so you could get more of an overview of what fatigue feels like and not just my point of view on what fatigue feels like. But before I went off on a tangent, I was going to tell you what mental fatigue is like for me. So mental fatigue is like you suddenly just get this block on your head. My family say there's just no one home, there's just no one there. I usually say that I zone out, so I'll be like, oh sorry, I was zoning, like but basically you just get this block, and suddenly you don't have the energy to think, you don't have the energy to talk, you don't have the energy to do anything, which basically results in a whole lot of me staring at walls pretty much. I spent so much time just staring off into space basically, because when mental fatigue really hits you, you just don't physically have the energy to even think. You stare off into space, you're not thinking about anything, there's no thoughts whizzing around, it's just blank. Sometimes obviously it's less extreme than that, so I can get mental fatigue where my concentration isn't there. I really struggle with word finding, so if I'm in an exam, sometimes I have to take a minute because I'm really struggling to find a word because my brain's getting tired, or I really struggle to concentrate, so sometimes I have to film lectures and stuff because I know my brain's not quite there. But that's basically how I would describe mental fatigue, but it's much more than, you know, people will think it's similar to you doing a lot of classes or working really hard or doing a lot of homework or a really taxing day at work. That's not mental fatigue. Yes, that's you being tired and that's your brain getting tired, but it's very different when you have mental fatigue. You can't push through it like you could with the normal tiredness, and it just gets worse, it just snowballs if you ever try to the point where yes, you'll stare at walls thinking of nothing because you're too tired. But that's my two explanations of fatigue. I do have a few others that I thought I would read to you because I want to share lots of people's experiences, not just mine, and give you a bit more of an overview on fatigue. So I have a quote here, somebody from the MS Trust, who says that fatigue feels like I'm an inflatable and somebody has pulled the air stopper out. My brain goes fuzzy and I can't think clearly. My speech slurs and my eyesight goes. Swallowing becomes more difficult, my balance gets worse, and my legs feel heavy and clumsy. I can completely relate to what this person is saying. I also get speech issues, which can sometimes sound a bit like I'm drunk. I get quite slurred, and sometimes I get it where I struggle to get the speech from my brain to my mouth. There's a bit of a lag, and I completely understand the legs feeling heavy. That's something I always describe it as to my mum, I'll say my head feels heavy, my legs feel heavy, because like with the walking through mud analogy, it is that physical effort to lift yourself, to move yourself. It's that physical effort that is associated with usual things you can do with your body. So there's another one from the MS Trust that says fatigue feels like being weighed down, as if you're trying to walk up to your neck in deep mud, which is obviously very like what I said, but she goes further to say that it feels like walking in deep mud up to your neck, in heavy wet clothes, carrying shopping bags full of rocks, which is sort of like how I describe it. She's just gone into a bit more detail with it, so obviously I completely understand what she's saying. And the last one from the MS Trust is fatigue leaves me feeling dulled and tired. I find it hard to concentrate and to absorb new ideas, and I'm often confused, searching for the right words and forgetting things, which again is sort of like how I describe my mental fatigue. And then the last one we have is Joanne from the MS Society, and she says, for me, fatigue feels like I'm swimming in a thick chocolate and I usually can't carry on. But she says that she has learned not to put too much pressure on herself because she can only do her best, which I think is something super important to remember with fatigue, about not pushing yourself, because I'm very guilty of pushing myself too far with my fatigue. Some of my other symptoms as well, but especially my fatigue. And I think you have to remember there's only so much you can do if you are having a bad fatigue day, and sometimes you have to just listen to your body. I am going to now tell you some of the things that you can do to manage your fatigue. The first thing about managing fatigue is ensuring you have the maximum level of energy available to you. So another very common analogy that is used with fatigue is that you have a pot of energy, or that you have maybe a fuel tank of energy, and you only have so much per day, and everything you do, including like going to the toilet or getting a drink, it takes some out of that pot. And people who do have fatigue, their pot is a lot smaller and there's only so much you can do. So this first tip is about ensuring that that pot is as full as it can be. So these are things like eating healthily, trying to stay active, trying to ensure you get the best amount of sleep, that you aren't stressed, and that you have a good mood. Some of those I completely understand are very contradictory. You should stay active because you're fatigued, or you're fatigued, so you can't stay active. And I get that, and I have been weighed down in that cycle so many times. But even if you can only get out to downstairs, if you can go for a 2-minute walk, if you can just get out of bed, I mean, if you can't, that is absolutely fine. You can take days, weeks, however long you need. It's your body, and no one else can tell you that you should be doing things. Just saying, if you are physically able to, even if it is just a minute, but it does really help. And all of those things together, they're just going to ensure that that pot of energy is as full as it can be. So even though you're still going to have fatigue, it's going to ensure that you've got a little bit more energy to be working with before you run out. And then the second point is learning how to use that energy, that pot, that fuel tank, however you're thinking of it, how to use it efficiently. So this is where sort of planning and prioritizing what you want to do and delegating to other people, that's why that kind of thing plays in. And also learning to sort of pace yourself. So you kind of have to learn with fatigue, to sort of decide what's important for you to be able to do, or things that maybe somebody else can do for you. And also planning is very important. So I have a few other tips that aren't really ways of managing fatigue, but they are a couple of extra tips, which are things like divert your attention away from your fatigue. The more you think of it, the more it's gonna feel like it's weighing over you. So thinking of something else is really great, whether that be you being able to do something like doing a bit of colouring or something non-taxing, or whether it's just that you just think of something nicer, you spend a bit of time with your family whilst you're fatigued, or things like that. And I would definitely say, if you are new to MS or fatigue, something that is really good to do is to keep a diary just for a week of your fatigue, and then you can sort of see over that week when your energy levels are at their best, and you'll also be able to evaluate if there's any warning signs or triggers to your fatigue. So for example, myself, my fatigue is much worse at night time. I know for some people their fatigue is worse in the morning and they get better as the day goes on. For me, my fatigue gets worse during the day, and it's sort of at its very worst at night time. And the warning signs can be things, for me personally, just as an example, things like my eyes get sore, I'll get stiffness in all my limbs, I tend to maybe get a headache, and I can start feeling my limbs go sort of weak. So that's when I know that I'm gonna have like a really severe attack of fatigue. Obviously if you have MS, you know you're fatigued all the time. You don't really have a time when you're not fatigued. It's just about managing the fatigue and knowing when it's going to be at its worst. So finally, I did want to say there's also medications that you can use to help you manage your fatigue. A lot of people choose to go natural or to choose to manage it with exercise and things like that. But if your fatigue is at a point where your neurologists feel like you need a bit of support, a bit more help with your fatigue, there are medications. I am on methylphenidate. I have gone through I think about 4 or 5 different fatigue medications, and we have eventually come to methylphenidate, which is not a usual drug used to treat fatigue, but it's working really well for me. But obviously not everyone chooses to have medication, and not everyone is in the place where they need medication, so that's definitely something you should discuss with your neurologist if you feel like you need it. I just wanted to say that there are things that are out there that can help if you feel like you need it. So that's it for the fatigue video, and I wanted to thank you for your response online. I asked everyone to give me some assumptions. I didn't think I would get lots, but Facebook has gone mad and I think I've got over 800 at the moment. So I've decided, instead of having it as a one-off video, I'm going to make a monthly segment on monthly assumptions about MS. So the first one should be out next week. Pick some of the most common ones that were on Facebook. And speaking of Facebook, I have made a page because a lot of you seem to be wanting me to be more engaged in Facebook rather than Instagram. So I have an Instagram, which is at jess.withms, and now I've made a Facebook page, just Jess with MS, or all separate words, and I will link that down below as well, so you can find it. You know, subscribe to help me reach more people, and if you want to just see more about MS, like the video if you enjoyed it, and obviously go and follow my Instagram and Facebook if you want to know when I'm posting and things. So thank you guys very much. Bye!